And then one day, I found myself in a bookshop that was part of a mosque. Okay? So I found myself in this bookshop, and all these books, and Muhammad, and Salah, and prayer, and then I was looking at all this, and wow, fantastic, look at all of this stuff. And a guy comes and he says to me, excuse me, are you a Muslim? And I'm thinking, well, I am Muslim. What does he mean by that? He said, listen, I said to him, I'll tell you. I believe there is only one God, which is Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. He said, you're a Muslim. I said, oh, thanks. Thank you. It's like, yeah, oh, good. He said, look, we're just about to pray. Do you want to come and pray? Now, it must have been Jummah. It must have been Jummah, because you never see a mosque at midday. I mean, I didn't know about Jummah then, okay? But I went and I prayed, and everyone was like, and I was sort of like, oh, what's going on? And I've obviously got it wrong all this time, you know? And, you know, but I remember afterwards, you know, everyone was surrounding me. You know, and everyone there wanted to teach me the whole of Islam in 5 minutes. You know, I remember walking out of that feeling literally like I had been given a shower on the inside. And like I was walking on clouds. It was quite fantastic. Now, actually, I would say that that's about 2/3 of my story. The other third, okay, we don't have time to go into it, maybe another time, okay? But very briefly, I would have to say that in spite of that being the time when I entered into Islam, it really took me another 2 years before I was really able to start practicing properly. And you know, it was really actually very hard to give up my former way of life, you know, and the things that I used to do. But you know, Allah taught me some pretty hard lessons. I don't regret them. They're very, you know, I look back now and I learned some very good lessons from those days. But you know, they were the 2 most miserable years of my life. Why? Because I knew the truth and I wasn't following it. Actually, that's the worst condition a human being can ever be in. You know, because if you're ignorant, you know, they say ignorance is bliss. Actually, ignorance itself isn't bliss. But meaning when you don't know something, you're in a sort of state of innocence. But when you know something, and then you don't live according to what you know, you can't live with yourself. It's terrible. It's a horrible condition. And that's what happened to me for about 2 years. But alhamdulillah, you know, alhamdulillah, I came back to Islam, I came back to the deen. I never used to say, I mean, I would always say that I'm Muslim. You know, I would always say that I was Muslim. People just didn't take me seriously. You know, there I was at parties and drinking wine, and you know, I remember sometimes I was sitting at a party and sitting around people, telling people about Islam, and they'd be going, yeah, really, that's fantastic, tell me more. And I said, oh, I'm just too gone, I'm just too, you know, I've been drinking too much, I can't. And no, tell us, a blunk, like that. That's my condition that I was in. But you know, alhamdulillah, Allah woke me out of that, and you know, then it happened, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me, and I, you know, came back round. And the thing that changed me, brothers and sisters, was this. Really a simple thing, a very simple thing. I started to pray 5 times a day. You know, people say to me, Abdurraheem, how can I? You know what? The prayer, if you do the prayer properly, if you really pray 5, and that's what I said, I promised Allah that I will pray 5 times a day. I said, I don't know that if I can do anything else, but I will do that. And I took it really seriously. You know, I took it really, really, really seriously. Alhamdulillah, the prayer, when it is said properly, is something that itself will change your life. Now, I know you're going to ask me another question, and there's 2 questions you will ask me. So I'll answer them before you ask me. Right? Number 1 is, how does it feel to be a Muslim? And compared to how it was before. Now, I will tell you honestly how it is like. If I was to describe it, it would be like this. Imagine you live, or imagine you find yourself in a building. And this building, like any building, is full of obstacles. Chairs, tables, lamps, stairs. Imagine just even this room. If we made it pitch black, I mean so dark that you could not see a thing. Right? And we left you here, and then we started mixing you all around, and everyone had to think. Now imagine you try and find your way out. Imagine I try and find my way out. I'm going to bang myself, hit myself, fall over. You know, you're living in this dark place. This is like disbelief. This is like the state where you are out of Islam. You're in this dark place. You don't really know where you're going. You don't know where you've come from. And life is full of obstacles. It keeps throwing things at you. And you don't really know how to cope with them. Islam, it is really like you open the door and then you stepped outside and you're in the light. Suddenly you could see, suddenly you could understand, suddenly everything is clear. This is what it is like. Or you could also say it is like the difference between death and life, between being really alive and being dead. Because this is Islam. It brings the light and the peace and the tranquility to the hearts. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing, you know. So this is how we could say how I could really compare Islam. And I know the other question is going to be, what did your parents say? And I have to say honestly that me and my parents, alhamdulillah, have a better relationship now that I'm Muslim than we ever had before. I mean, if you really were able to get them to be honest, right, and to tell them how they really feel, they would admit without a shadow of a doubt, okay, that Islam has given me responsibility, it has ordered me to treat them with so much respect, and they would have to admit that Islam has been something that's good for me and also good for my relationship between me and them. So, you know, we get on, alhamdulillah, now really, really well, alhamdulillah. Okay, brothers and sisters, I hope I've covered most of the how do I come to Islam questions, okay? That's a very good question. The question was, did I ever get rich? Yeah, I think probably I'm one of the richest people in the world. I know if you open the world's top 100 wealthiest people, you won't find my name there, okay? But if you really honestly, I would say yes, I am rich. But you see, what really is wealth? What is the true wealth? The true wealth is contentment. If your heart is at rest and you feel peace and tranquility in your soul, then you have everything. But what is it going to benefit you really? What does it benefit you? If you have millions and millions or billions and billions and you're miserable, what does it benefit you? If you have all that money and you're miserable, you've got nothing. See, really, this is the thing. I was looking for wealth, but alhamdulillah, Allah guided me and He gave me wealth. The true wealth. The true wealth, which is the peace and the tranquility and the contentment that comes from submitting yourself to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah.
Well, I'm also a revert to Islam, and I did that when I was 15, and I'm now almost 18. And I'm finding it really hard with my parents at the moment, and I was wondering, in retrospect with you, would you say anything or deal with your parents differently now that you're looking back at the situation?
I would definitely deal with my parents differently, and I would advise anyone who is, first of all, mashallah, you said you just become Muslim recent? MashaAllah, when you were 15, MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah. Yeah, okay, so you've had a few years of dealing with your parents already maybe. But I mean, my advice is, I always advise people, take it really easy with your parents. In fact, I will even go as far as to say, don't even talk. I know this is going to sound controversial, but I'm going to suggest it. Don't even talk to them about Islam. Don't. Wait until they ask you questions. Yes? Let them have their space, let them have their time. You know, you have to remember, please remember this. Your parents will always remember you as a little baby. I remember my son as a little child, a little baby lying on my chest, sleeping, and I was afraid to go to sleep because I was listening, is he still breathing or not? That's what I remember. You know, I mean, the guy's huge now, and both of them are pretty huge. Well, I've got 9 kids, right? Okay, including one that's just a little baby. But you know, that's how you remember them. So when this little kid, right, starts telling you about, no, you're wrong, and it's like this and it's like that, it's like, hello, I changed your nappies, you know. So, you know, the thing is that you have to remember that with your parents, and that's why I recommend Take it really easy with them. Wait for them to ask you questions. Now when they've asked you a question, that means they've indicated a curiosity, right? They want to know an answer. And then the onus on them is to listen. Now if they complain, you say, you know, in the nicest way, you say, Mom and Dad, look, I didn't bring it up, you asked me. No, I'm sorry if I upset you. And just leave it, okay? Now, of course you're going to feel really like you want to let them know about Islam. So a tactic that I suggest sometimes, especially if it's difficult, is to leave some books lying around. Yeah? You know, and believe me, they're going to pick them up and they're going to get curious. And you could leave some books. I mean, it depends on your parents, right? It really does. Some parents, they really want to know, and some parents, they don't. But the most important thing is you have to respect your parents so much. Remember Allah, He told us in the Quran that we shouldn't even say uff. You know, we shouldn't even go, huh. We shouldn't even say that to our parents. That's how we need to respect them. Paradise, that your parents are your paradise and your hellfire. If they're pleased with you, Allah is pleased with you. If they're displeased with you, Allah is displeased with you. So, yani, you have to do everything you can. Okay? As long as the only barrier I have to say, the only thing is this, is that you are not allowed to do something haram to please them. Because there is no obedience to the creation, there's no obedience to the creation in disobedience to Allah. In other words, we don't obey a created being and disobey Allah. But with my parents, believe me, anything they tell me to do, inshallah, I will do my best to do it. As long as, but if they ask me to do something haram, I say, Mom and Dad, that's the limit for me. Right? You're asking me to do something that Islam does not allow, and that's something I can't do. But anything else, you know, I will compromise on as much as possible. But when it comes to the haram things, no, I will not. Or ordering me to leave something that Allah has ordered, no, that I can't do. But otherwise, you do absolutely everything. I believe the best way to give da'wah to your parents is by treating them the way Islam tells you to treat them. Through your example, through your manners, through really treating them in that respect and honor that Islam gives to the parents. Future of, it's a very good question. A very, very good question. The future of Islam in the West. You know, I really don't know. You know, I used to be very optimistic. You know, maybe even the light of Islam may come again from the West. That's what I used to think. Because it seemed to me that the West was teaching Muslims some things that we had lost amongst ourselves. You know, if you go to the Muslim lands, you know, I mean, this is true, right? Okay? Here in New Zealand, by and large, 99% of the time, right? Do you have to bribe policemen? If you want your telephone connected, right? Do you have to wait 12 months, but if you want it to be quicker, you have to give a big hefty bribe? No? But let's look at our Muslim countries, right? Yeah? Everywhere you go, bribery and corruption. Bribery and corruption. Okay? Oppressive governments. Dictatorial regimes. Random arrests. Will you feel really sure that in a Muslim country that justice will be done if you go to court? Or you think that the one who pays the judge the biggest bribe is going to get the ruling in their favor? I mean, this is the sort of problems that we face. In the West we have social services, we have free healthcare, we have so many things. Our religion teaches those things. Islam condemns so strongly corruption, bribery, lying, cheating, stealing, oppression and tyranny. Justice is something so essential to our religion. Yet where do we find these things in our lands? Where do we find? Do we even find them in our own homes, amongst ourselves? You see? And so I think there are some qualities that are so important to our religion, but it seems somehow we lost them. Yet the really strange thing is, we find these qualities here in the West. Now let's be honest. This has to be some of the reasons we love living in the West so much. Let's be honest. Of course we have problems with, some issues of sexuality, nudity, girlfriends, boyfriends, homosexuality. We have problems with that. We'll be honest, we do. We find it very difficult. The whole sex, drugs and rock and roll culture is so different to the way we look at the world. But that's only one aspect, right? Isn't it? But there is another aspect that we find so compatible. Yes? Okay, so, I really had a hope that, and still, that maybe the Muslims living in the West will feel inspired again to return to these essential qualities and values that we have lost. And it reminds me of Muhammad Abdur. Muhammad Abdur was a scholar from Egypt, from Al-Azhar in the last century. He traveled to England. He said, I found Islam but no Muslims. Now, I say that's how I used to feel. Now I'm not so sure. Because when now I look at the West, unfortunately, I'm beginning to see many of those negative qualities actually beginning to happen. Okay? Some of the very things that were the good treasured qualities, you could say, about the West, now they seem to be, to me, like they're fading away. And I especially have to say with this neoconservative movement, headed by George Bush and followed by the Trinity, I call them, Blair, Bush and Howard, okay? You see this neoconservative agenda taking over. And it really concerns me. And I feel concerned for the West, not just for Muslims, okay, but for them. And it is so sad to see that many of the qualities that makes that the West could stand really and say we have these qualities, they are losing them. Okay? What we find in America, in Britain, 1,000 years, at least in Britain, more than 1,000 years perhaps of human rights and from the Magna Carta onwards, it's just been wiped out, just like that. Just like that, wiped out. I mean, in England now, you can be arrested and put in prison indefinitely. Okay? You can be, at the behest of the United States of America, you can be deported to the United States of America, and you don't even have the right to know what you're supposed to have done wrong. You don't have the right to a lawyer. You don't have the right to appear in front of a judge. You don't even have the right to know what are the charges against you. Now, surely that demolishes the whole claim to human rights and justice. So I'm reaching a stage where I'm beginning to feel a bit, nervous. Maybe there will be an exodus, I don't know, from the Muslims. Maybe things will get too tough. I believe there is an agenda at the moment. I don't want to go on too long about this, okay? But I do believe that we could really simplistically, and this is just for analysis, divide the Western world into two groups of people. The people who really believe in what we could call the liberal ideal. They believe in liberalism. They believe in multiculturalism. They believe in the idea of societies and religions living together, okay, in society. And they really do believe in those things. And there's many people, young and old, who stick to those ideals. We just need to see the 2.5 million people in England. It was amazing to see it. 2.5 million people who came to demonstrate against the war in Iraq. In Milan, nearly 5 million people. These are perhaps some of the biggest demonstrations that we know in history. Okay? So there is this broad, this broad group of people, who really still believe in these ideals. But there is another ideology